Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video of the Global Awareness Report. This is for the 1st of October 2022. Unfortunately, I could not record this earlier. I know it's been a while since the last one. It's been almost a month. I'm pretty sure it has been a month exactly, but we are going to get through everything we missed, and we're going to get all caught up and up to date on what's been happening in Ukraine and globally and geopolitically. So let's start with the Ukraine war, and let's start with the Northern Front. As you can see, it's a lot different than the last video I put out. Russian forces have retreated almost entirely from Kharkov Oblast here. Ukrainian forces managed to make a breakthrough at Shevchenkove and this region around here. And I thought that a battle would ensue, that Russia would send in reinforcements, and that there would be quite a big open ground battle. But Russian forces decided to retreat behind the Oskil River instead and pull all of their forces from the north of the oblast. Their front line was something around here. This was what their front line pretty much looked like before they retreated, something like that. This is over 8,500 square kilometers of territory Ukraine has recaptured. A major victory. And Ukrainian forces kept pressing on, and they even managed to recapture Izum and Kupiansk. And they've now pushed past the Oskil River and have captured positions east across the Oskil River, and have made a major breakthrough through Oskil city itself, and are now threatening to encircle Lyman. And on the 27th, Ukrainians recapture most of the stuff on the 27th. The 27th through the 30th, this is when Ukraine captured this eastern bank of the river. And you see how flat and very hard to defend this whole area right here. And these are armored forces that are pushing across. So it'll be very hard to defend the northern part of Luhansk province. And speaking of why this color is darker than usual, we will get to that, but I'm sure you can probably already take a guess. But they've also captured east of Dovorice, and have captured positions east of this town, this settlement here. So they are making bridgeheads across the Oskil River. And further towards down south, Russian forces, because Izum was threatening to be encircled, they pulled out of Izum around the 12th, 13th, around that time. And from the 14th to the 18th, somewhere around this time, it's unknown exactly where, Ukrainian forces capture Oskil, and on the 17th they capture Yatskivka, and that managed, and then on the 22nd they made a breakthrough at Rubisti and Lotsove, and managed to capture all of these towns here, all of these towns on the 24th. And a major breakthrough occurred on the 24th through the 25th. And now they are just north of Lyman, a major Russian stronghold here, a Russian captured stronghold. as well as down here to the west, they've recaptured these positions. And as well as the Seversky Donets River, they've captured Yamapol and positions across the river. So this whole area is under threat of being encircled completely. And you can see the road here. Because Ukrainians have captured Dubrovy, this road, as you can see, is just right here. And this is the major supply route that Lyman can be reinforced by. And you can see here, there's another road here, but as you can see, Ukrainians are on the other side of this reservoir here. So this supply road is cut off, and this supply road is cut off. It's too dangerous to send supplies through these areas because Ukrainian forces are right there. So Russian forces need to take back Dobrivia, and they need to push Ukrainians out of this forest. They need to take this area right here in order to secure this road to reinforce Lyman, or their forces at Lyman will be encircled if they do not pull out and if they wish to defend the city. This is what they need to do. Over at the Lysychansk front, Ukrainian forces have recaptured Belohorivka on the 20th. This town was under Ukrainian control for a while before they were eventually pushed out of it around July. Around in early August, if I can recall correctly. So now Lysychansk is no longer completely under Russian control. And as for Sperne, I have no definitive information as to who controls it. Both sides are claiming control over it, so the town is heavily contested and it's probably changing sides rapidly. So I am just going to leave it as blank here, as contested. So as for this front, Russian forces are rapidly being pushed out of Kharkiv Oblast and the north of Donetsk here, because Lyman is a part of Donetsk Oblast. So they are being pushed out of this rapidly. And because of this massive defeat for Russia in Kharkiv Oblast, and because that they are on the back foot now, being pushed back rapidly by advanced Ukrainian armored forces, which has American-made, armored personnel carriers. These armored personnel carriers, I forget the exact name. It's the M112, something like that, I believe is what it's called. It's old and out of date, but it's better than nothing. And so these Ukrainian forces now have armored personnel carriers. And you can see, the mechanized brigade, the airborne brigade, special forces, tank brigades are all in this area, and they're all pushing through here. And Russia doesn't have enough forces to defend against it. So Russia, on the 21st of September, announced the mobilization of 300,000 reservists. Vladimir Putin stated only citizens who are currently in the reserve and have served in the armed forces are being mobilized, and that they will take additional military training because they haven't really experienced something like the war in Ukraine before, so they're going to be retrained to fit the needs of the Russian army in Ukraine. And a day before that, on the 20th, Kherson, the Luhansk People's Republic, Donetsk People's Republic, and Zaporozhye held a referendum that lasted for a week. It lasted from the 23rd No, it lasted from the 23rd to the 27th. It didn't last for a week. From the 23rd to the 27th, according to RT, to join the Russian Federation. And on the 30th, the results are in, and Putin announced 4 new regions in a speech on the Kremlin, that these areas are now in the process of joining the Russian Federation. So this is very big news, as well as Zelensky, when Russia announced this, he said that Zelensky was filing an expedient application to join NATO. So a rapid application. They want to join NATO as quickly as they possibly can. So this has the serious potential to escalate into a conflict between NATO and Russia. And we are going to see what will happen. I cannot predict the future here because I don't know how quickly Ukraine can join NATO. I don't know if NATO will accept a Ukrainian application right now, given the fact that that risks war with Russia. And I'm not sure how long it will take for these regions to be fully annexed into the Russian Federation. But they are not fully annexed yet. They are on their way to becoming... They're on their way to be annexed by Russia yet. It has to go through a legal and bureaucratic process first. So as you can see, Ukraine is making a lot of gains, and Russia is trying to consolidate these gains, and they are on the back foot, and they are mobilizing reservists and trying to consolidate their territory into their country. So the war is entering a new phase, and we will have to wait and see what will happen. This may also cause NATO to want to negotiate with Russia, although will Ukraine accept that? That is unlikely, considering Zelensky has stated multiple times that Ukraine will not seek peace until all of its territory has been recaptured, including Crimea. How true is this statement? I doubt that Russia will allow Ukraine to retake Crimea. Russia will see a Ukrainian attack on Crimea, Ukrainian forces trying to capture territory in Crimea, as a direct attack against Russia itself. And with these regions being annexed into Russia, once they are fully a part of the Russian Federation, any Ukrainian attack on that, Russia might consider an attack on its own sovereign territory, and therefore might mobilize even more reservists and even more men. But this mobilization is not very popular, and a military recruiter was shot on the 26th. The shooting comes after scattered arson attacks on enlistment and offices and protests in Russian cities that call against the call up that has resulted in at least 2,000 arrests. This is on the 26th. So there are people in Russia which are resisting this, and quite heavily resisting this, including resorting to violence in order to resist the population. There is a strong portion, a small but strong portion of the population that does not want to be mobilized and is resisting this. So the mobilization is not incredibly popular with young people. I think most young people are against it. Older people are probably for it. But there is, that there's consequences to mobilization domestically in Russia. So we are going to move on towards the Kherson front, and there is some developments here. Russia on the 14th and 15th launched missiles and struck dams on the Inhulets River, causing flooding in this part of the downstream of the river. And Ukrainian forces were using pontoon bridges to cross into this salient here, which actually extended further down in this. It extended further down here, but it was pushed back. The salient has been pushed back, and there is also flooding along the river here on the 14th and 15th. The dams may have been filled up by now, may have been repaired by now. I'm not sure, but this caused the Ukrainian Kherson offensive, which was already stalling, to be stalled even more. As well as on the 15th, Russian forces were at Belohodotne. I thought the Ukrainian forces had captured them, but that was false reporting. But this appears to be the front line at the moment. Not much has changed in Kherson. On the Kherson front, barely anything has changed. It is a stagnant front. The main front is up here in the north. This is where all of the fighting and action is at the moment. Near the Backwood front, Russian forces managed to capture these settlements west of Dache and Zaitseve, and they've captured Maryorsk, this little area right here. Maryorsk, Zohovanka, Milokalvika, at the south of Milokalvika and the northern part of it, as well as has advanced into this northern area here. And actually, Russian forces have actually captured this power plant here. I believe this is a power plant. They've actually captured that, but I've forgotten to update that there. But from my understanding, they are under control of this area right here. So we're gonna update the map to reflect that right there. And Ukrainian forces might not be in this position either, but I will have to check later to double check this area. My apologies for that, but that is the update on the front line and the update on the war. Russia is annexing the territories it occupies, and Ukraine is trying to join NATO, as well as Russia mobilizing 300,000 reservists. So the war is escalating rapidly. The Ukrainian forces are making a lot of very significant gains, and Russia is on the back foot. But maybe that these extra troops and reservists might change the tides of the war, so to say, and maybe Russia will be able to take back its lost territory in Donetsk, and maybe even capture new territory it's never had before in Donetsk with these 300,000 reservists, although the chances of that happening are not very high. I don't believe if the West continues to supply Ukraine with its most advanced weaponry, then it'll be very difficult for the Russians to achieve this. But if you think about it, not all of Kherson is owned by the Russians. You still have a lot of this territory here, which wouldn't be super difficult to take. And you have parts of Zaporozhye, which, excluding the city itself, again, it's quite flat territory. It's quite flat terrain here, so maybe Russians will be able to make some advances here. We'll have to wait and see. But given how Ukrainian forces are able to push so deeply into Russian territory and just completely get rid of an entire sector of the war and, you know, put Russia on the back foot in such a degree, I mean, they managed to push the Russians, you know, 50 miles, which is 88 kilometers back. Push their front line 55 miles back, 88 kilometers back, so can the Russians do the same? I have my doubts about that, but you never know what will happen. I had my doubts that Ukraine would be able to pull something like this off, and they did, so never underestimate any side in a war. Don't underestimate anybody. Anything can happen. So that will be the Ukrainian war update of this video. We're going to move on to the geopolitical update. On the 26th, Kazakhstan, the minister, and the president, the foreign minister and the president said that Kazakhstan will not recognize the referendums in eastern Ukraine, saying that they're not going to recognize this territory as being a part of the Russian Federation. They're not going to recognize the new borders. Now, Kazakhstan is a Russian ally, is a Russian strategic partner. However, they've been drifting away from Russia in recent years, and this goes to show that the Kazakhstan government is not 100% always on Moscow's side on everything. So Kazakhstan appears to be moving away from the Russian sphere of influence, the Russian orbit, geopolitical orbit. But maybe this is just a one-time thing where they know that they can't really recognize these territories, otherwise they'll face a lot of sanctions from the West. So maybe Putin understands this and doesn't really mind them not recognizing, or maybe they're drifting away looking towards China, or maybe even the West for new allies. But time will tell what the Kazakhstan geostrategy will end up being for the next few years. We'll see if their geopolitical alignment shifts in any major significant way. Although from the current looks of things, they are drifting away from the Russian sphere. We're going to move over to the Caucasus, where on the 13th of September, major border clashes between Armenia and Azerbaijan occurred. The deadliest fighting since the war in 2020. According to the Armenian government, at least 49 Armenian troops were killed in the attacks. I believe that this is what it's saying. Azerbaijan has denied instigating the fighting, but Western sources they say that Azerbaijan did instigate the fighting. So the West and most analysts believe that Azerbaijan was the one to instigate the fighting, and this makes sense. Armenia has a small and weak military compared to Azerbaijan, and is a smaller country, has a smaller economy, and it lost the war in 2020, so why would they try to attack Azerbaijan? Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. So in my opinion, Azerbaijan probably was the one to reignite the fighting, but at the same time, it doesn't really make sense to do so, since Armenia is a member of CSTO, the Collective Security Treaty Organization, which is the Russian equivalent to NATO. Since Armenia is a part of that, an attack on Armenia would be considered an attack on Russia. And thankfully, major war, and it did not break out, and escalating the violence didn't happen. No one escalated violence to a full-out war. which is what some people thought would happen. But there was an emergency meeting, and the conflict, the skirmishes were resolved. But this goes to show that there's rising tensions once again in the Caucasus region, right under Russia, which is currently, involved in Ukraine, and has most of its forces and most of its attention drawn to Ukraine. So a war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, it might not have the resources necessary to deal with that. Moving over to Italy, the Italian far right, quote unquote, has won the elections after we reported on the Italian government collapsing and the parliament dissolving, and snap elections were to be held in September. The Italian far right, the Brothers of Italy party, has won the election in a surprising, well, I'm not sure if it was very surprising, but this Italian government is, I guess you could describe it as right-wing populist. Think of Viktor Orban of Hungary, if you know his policies. It's similar to that, similar to Donald Trump, Viktor Orban, these national conservatives, nationalist conservatives, and right-wing populists. That's what she is. That's what Giorgia Meloni is. She is a nationalist and a right-wing populist. So they have won the Italian elections, and on the Wikipedia for their party, it says that they are Eurosceptic. And I'm not sure how true that is. I'm not sure how Eurosceptic they are. I'm not sure if they want Italy to leave the European Union or not. But we'll see, because the chances of Italy leaving the European Union is is a lot higher now. So this might shake up the entire. This has the potential of shaking up the geopolitics of the Mediterranean with a new far-right government in Italy. I say far-right in quotation marks because far-right is subjective. The far-right in Italy is different than the far-right in Ireland or Romania or America or China or Japan. It's all different, Something far-right in America might be not so controversial in China, for example, or something far right in Sweden might be seen as moderate in America. So we're going to say, but they are national conservatives, they are nationalists, so I guess in that regard they can be considered quite right-wing. As well as earlier in the month, on the 15th as well, another far-right party, another nationalist party, won the elections in Sweden. The Social Democrats, won or lost the vote. Lost the vote by a small amount here. So the Swedish far right, which is the Social Democrats, if we're going to use that term, and moderate right-wing parties as well, won the election in Sweden. And now they have to form a coalition. They have to form a new government. The bloc includes, the Swedish Democrats, the far-right party, according to the BBC here. So, two right-wing to far-right parties, I guess we could say, in both Sweden and Italy, have won the elections this month. And we are seeing a rise in populism, right-wing populism, and a rise in nationalism across Europe. And we've been seeing this since the Brexit vote, obviously, but if in Italy and even Sweden these right-wing parties can win these elections, maybe in Germany and some of these other Western European countries, right-wing parties will be able to win even in some of these countries, which normally don't vote in right-wing governments. So we will have to see if any other elections happen and if any other right-wing parties get elected, because the more and more the global order shifts towards a multipolar system, it already has done so in most ways, but the more and more this liberal internationalism it's declining in popularity. You know, the early 2000s idea of like global trade, global democracy, every nation will be democratic, every nation will have free trade and be a capitalist liberal democracy. This idealism which many politicians believed in the early 2000s and which many countries pursued as their foreign policy is just not going to happen anymore. And so we're seeing right-wing parties take power as the European Union fails to meet the needs of its citizens with rising costs of living and an escalating war in Europe. You know, we're seeing the current leadership of these more moderate and more left-leaning parties is not up to the task, at least in the eyes of the people who are voting in alternative governments. So we're going to round up here with a interesting piece of news. Nord Stream 2, the pipeline, from Russia to Germany here, which has never been operational before, it's never actually opened, was experiencing a lot of leaks in its natural gas. Apparently, I'm not sure how that works. I'm not sure why there's natural gas flowing when the pipeline, when Germany isn't buying from Nord Stream 2. I'm not a natural gas expert. But there are people who are claiming that this was a sabotage, that this was a industrial terrorism, industrial sabotage from Russia. There are people who are saying that it was from America, planting explosives and sabotaging the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. The European Union is calling it an attack on the pipeline. So, Russia, of course, denies this, calling these claims stupid, denying any kind of responsibility for this. So, this is an environmental disaster, primarily. So, hopefully, these leaks and these holes in the pipeline can be patched up, and all this natural gas bubbling towards the surface of the water can be cleaned up as fast as possible. Because the amount of wildlife and natural fish and coral and everything being destroyed in this area. It happened around the island of Bornholm, this island right here. It happened around this area is where the leaks happened. So the first things first is to, repair the pipelines and try to hopefully clean up as much as possible and repair the ecosystem. I have no idea if this was an attack or not. There is no evidence to suggest that it was an attack from what I've seen. But we will have to just wait and see what new evidence arrives, if any, to see if this is a possible sabotage or not. And that is going to do it for this episode of the Global Awareness Report. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you for watching.